Hello everyone, welcome to EduHunt video lecture series, and this is Lata Krishna dealing with biology. And let's move on to the concept. As we are discussing about female reproductive system, we have gone through what are the structures associated with the female reproductive system, reproductive organs, that is primary and secondary sex organs in female individuals. Ovaries, structure of ovary and development of ovum, and also menstrual cycle. And we have also discussed some questions, basic questions on the concept. And let's move on to types of eggs. As we know that eggs are the female gametes. And here we are talking about the fertilized eggs and not the female gametes. That you keep in your mind, that these are not the female gametes, these are the fertilized products. These are fertilized eggs. That means all the eggs are diploid in nature, 2n, diploid in nature. That means they carry both one set of chromosomes from a male parent and the other set from female parent. An egg is the structure which is the basic what we call basic unit or a basic structure which develop into an embryo, and further it forms an individual, isn't it? Egg is the basic structure, egg is the most primitive form of the individual. And this based on type of eggs, even based on the type of what we call some kind of animals, they release eggs and they are called as oviparous animals. And some organisms, some animals, they give birth to young ones, they are called as viviparous animals. And oviparous animals, they lay eggs, and the eggs will be, after incubation, they will be hatch up into the young one. In case of viviparous animals, they directly give birth to individuals, that is they young ones, and they will have a parental care. And let's move on to the actual concept, types of eggs. On the basis of amount of yolk, we can categorize the eggs into alecital, microlecital or oligolecital, mesolecital and polylecital or macrolecital or megalecital. Alecital means there is very negligible quantity of yolk present in the egg. Negligible quantity, that is cytoplasm is more than the yolk. Example, human eggs are of this type. Remember that this is the fertilized egg. And microlecital or oligolecital. Micro means minute, little amount, very little amount of yolk is present. That is, even a cytoplasm dominates the yolk. It is seen in eutherian mammals and metatherian mammals and amphioxus, sea urchin. Sea urchin is an echinoderm, and protochordata. All these are examples of microlecital or oligolecital, where very little quantity of yolk is present in the egg. Whereas in case of alecital, in case of, if we use the term A, we say that it is no, it is equal to no, alecital. Alecital means no yolk or almost negligible quantity of yolk is present. Example, human being. And now move on to the third type, that is mesolecital, or both cytoplasm and yolk are almost equal in quantity. Example, amphibia, frog, amphibia, and petromyzon and lungfishes. All these bear mesolecital eggs. Polylecital or macrolecital or megalecital. That means large quantity of yolk is present. Cytoplasm is very little and yolk dominates the cytoplasm. Example, birds have this kind of eggs, even reptiles, insects and prototherians. Prototheria, metatheria, these are the mammals, one kind of mammals, prototheria. Prototherians, birds, even reptiles and insects also, they lay this kind of eggs, polylecital or megalecital or macrolecital. ఇదంతా కూడా అమౌంట్ ఆఫ్ యోక్ని బట్టి క్లాసిఫికేషన్, బేస్డ్ ఆన్ ద అమౌంట్ ఆఫ్ యోక్. అమౌంట్ ఆఫ్ యోక్ ఎక్కువ ఉందా తక్కువ ఉందా, ఈక్వల్గా సైటోప్లాజంతో ఈక్వల్గా ఉందా, లేదా నెగ్లిజిబుల్ చాలా నెగ్లిజిబుల్గా ఉందా అనే దాన్ని బట్టి మనము క్లాసిఫై చేసాం. అండ్ దిస్ ఈస్ అనదర్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ క్లాసిఫికేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఎగ్స్ బేస్డ్ ఆన్ ద యోక్, దట్ ఈస్ డిస్ట్రిబ్యూషన్ ఆఫ్ యోక్. ఇందాక మనం చూసింది amount of yolk, that is quantity of yolk. Now it is distribution of yolk. First one is isolecital or homolecital. Homolecital yolk is, it is in this kind of eggs, the yolk is homogeneously distributed in the egg. Example, in alecital egg and microlecital eggs are of this kind, isolecital or homolecital. If there is no or negligible amount of yolk or little amount of yolk, it will be distributed entirely in the egg. And second kind is telolecital. Telolecital is a moderate, it is again classified into moderate telolecital, and second is highly telolecital, or sometimes it may be confined to a pole and discoid in nature. So it is called the discoidal egg because the yolk is situated at one pole. If it is an egg, this is one pole and this is the another pole, and completely one pole has the yolk and in the form of a disc, a discoid egg antamu. Moderate telolecital yolk is, eggs are seen in amphibian. Amphibian eggs are mesolecital eggs, and moderately these are telolecital. A small quantity of and uniformly distributed, and sometimes it is what we call the cytoplasm and the yolk both are equal in quantity, and the yolk is distributed towards one end, not particularly, not exactly other pole. So this kind of egg is known as moderate telolecital. It is seen in amphibians. And the next category is highly telolecital or discoidal egg. Yolk is enormous, that is huge yolk is present and concentrate on one pole or one side of the egg in the cytoplasm, and cytoplasm is in small quantity and is present in the form of germinal disc. So this kind of discoidal eggs are seen in prototherians, birds and reptiles. And then centrolecital eggs. Centrolecital eggs, as the name itself is indicating that the yolk is concentrated at the center of the egg. So placement of the yolk in the center of the egg and the cytoplasm, and cytoplasm is in the form of superficial layer that surrounds the yolk. And in this eggs we can categorize the central yolk part and the peripheral cytoplasmic part of the egg. And this kind of egg is seen in insects. So this is another type of classification of eggs based on the distribution of yolk. First classification is amount of yolk. Based on the amount of yolk, we have classified the eggs into 4 different categories like alecithal, microlecithal, mesolecithal and megalecithal. And on the basis of distribution, we have categorized the eggs into isolecithal, telolecithal and the other category, that is centrolecital, and these are seen in different examples. On the basis of the shell, if the shell is hard or soft, based on the nature of the shell, we can categorize the eggs into 2 different types. One is cladoic eggs and the second category is non-cladoic eggs. Cladoic eggs, they bear a calcareous thick shell around the egg. So this kind of eggs are known as cladoic eggs. These are seen in prototherians, birds, reptiles and terrestrial insects. Mostly you can note one point that terrestrial animals lay this kind of eggs. They should be protected from the harsh environments. They should be protected from the other predators. So they protect their eggs by forming a thick calcareous shell. They are called as cladoic eggs. In case of non-cladoic eggs, eggs are not surrounded by hard shell material, and all viviparous animals, they lay, and even oviparous animals, which are usually, as I mentioned, that in this case they are the terrestrial, in this case these are the aquatic animals, especially amphibians. They lay this kind of eggs. They lay the eggs in the water. So they need not provide this kind of hard shell. They lay the eggs in the water, and they, after some time, they'll hatch up into the young ones and larva will come out of the egg. And this is the details of the eggs and egg types. We have seen types of eggs based on the classification of eggs based on the amount of yolk, distribution of yolk and the presence of outer covering, presence or absence of the covering. Let's move on to the extra embryonic membranes and placenta. The fetus is the fertilized zygote, that is fertilized egg, that will be given rise to the zygote, which will develop into an embryo. Embryo in the uterus is known as the fetus. Embryo in the uterus, human embryo in the uterus is known as the fetus. The developing embryo is known as the fetus, and the fetus is protected by 4 different layers of the uterus. That is the fetus, we can say. extra embryonic membranes. Extra embryonic membranes means these are the membranes or the layers which surround the developing fetus, and they provide the nourishment as well as they protect the developing fetus from the from different factors like the amniotic fluid is there, amnion. So amniotic fluid is there. It acts as a shock absorber. If there is any kind of hit on that womb, if it is a superficial thing, the fetus will not get affected because there is a layer known as amnion filled with amniotic fluid. It acts as a shock absorber. It reduces the friction. So in that way it protects the growing fetus. Amniota, and based on the presence of amnion, the fetus can be classified into the animals can be classified into amniotes and anamniotes. Amniotes are the animals which have amnion in their extra embryonic layers. For example, in reptiles, aves and mammalia, they have amnion surrounding the fetus. Surrounding the embryo, there is a layer known as amnion. If there is amnion, the animal is said to be amniotic animal or amniotes. Example are reptiles, aves. Aves means birds. Aves are nothing but birds. And then mammalia, mammals. Anamniotes are animals which do not have amnion in their extra embryonic membranes. So for example, class Cyclostomata and Pisces. Pisces are fish, and amphibia, they come under the category of anamniotes. Anamniota. Amniota ante amnion ane layer unte amniotes antamu. Anamniota ante amnion ane layer ledu. And these are the different extra embryonic layers. There are the 4 extra embryonic layers. One is the amnion, chorion, yolk sac and allantois. Amnion, chorion, yolk sac and allantois. These are the 4 different layers that surround and nourish the growing fetus. This is the growing fetus that we can say that embryo, and for growing embryo it is surrounded by 4 different walls, layers, membranes. We can see the yolk sac here, the yellow one is the yolk sac. I mentioned this with pink. Yes, this is the yolk sac. And allantois is this one. The green one is the allantois. Amnion, the blue one is the amnion. That is, I mentioned it with red. Pink one is the chorion. Chorion is the outermost covering of the fetus. So these are the 4 different layers. Amnion with a granular increase, there is an increase in the size of the amnion which covers the embryo on all sides. The embryo is covered by amnion and which has a layer which secretes a fluid called the amniotic fluid, and sometimes this amniotic fluid may be used in case of sex determination. It is quite common in some backward areas, but whether it is possible, whether it is correct or not, we cannot decide. After about 8 weeks of fertilization, that is after 8 weeks after fertilization, It is called the fetus. As I said, the embryo is called the fetus, developing embryo. After 8 weeks now, it is called the fetus, not the embryo, and it is surrounded by a fluid known as the amniotic fluid. This is the it is the amniotic fluid. It is the amniotic fluid which helps in transport of substances and protects from the protects the embryo. And chorion, after implantation of the blastocyst, the trophoblast gives out several finger-like projections, finger-like processes. These are the finger-like processes. Chorionic villi we call, and chorionic villi which get embedded into the uterine endometrium. Endometrium is the layer of the uterus into which the chorionic villi get inserted for the absorption of the food. And yolk sac, initially the size of the yolk sac is larger as compared to that of the embryo, and as the embryo grows, the yolk sac gets depleted because it provides the nourishment. Allantois, the mesoderm of allantois forms many small blood vessels, and also these vessels connect the embryo with the placenta and ensure nutrition and even respiration also. So these are the different layers of the fetus. What are the 4 different layers? Amnion, chorion, yolk sac and allantois. These are the 4 different layers or the membranes that surround the growing fetus, and they protect and nourish the fetus. If the fetus or the embryo is surrounded by the amnion, then the organism is said to be an amniote, and which the animals which do not have the amnion are come under the category of anamniota. Anamniotes are Pisces, cyclostomes and amphibians. Amniotes, we come under the category of amnion because we have amnion surrounding the fetus. So we are amniotes. So this is the session, and in the next session we will do some exercises based on this. Goodbye everyone.